This is a lecture on how to do melodic dictation. This is part of the ear training curriculum in a college. Now, this video is really oriented towards people who have just left high school and go into college for the first week, and then they start to get music dictation, and they don't know exactly what it's like. They've never heard anything about it before, and they don't know what to do, or they're having trouble with it. I saw an excellent lecture by a man who made a connection between high school mathematics and college mathematics. He did a very smooth connection, so I'd like to do that for the high school students and the beginning college students, the first week or month of college, and being involved in music ear training and music dictation. Now, I'm only going to talk about one aspect of ear training, and that is melodic dictation. And I will talk about all the other things having to do with ear training. At the end of the lecture, I'll go through all kinds of things. But I just want to specialize in just this one important area, okay? So what happens is you get you go into class, you get a piece of manuscript paper, of course something like this size, and you take that piece of manuscript paper and you put bars at either end. Then you put a bar in the middle and you cut those halves in halves. So you have 4 measures. Take the top sheet, ends, middle, cut the things in half. Okay. That gives you 4 measures. Now, melodic dictations are always 4 measures long. If the professor wants to do something longer, it can be 8 measures. Okay. Now, why is it 4 measures? And it's always 4 measures. You can bet 99% of the time it's 4 measures. Because this has to do with antecedent and consequent phrase structure. This is part of tonal music of the classical period. And when they start to teach you this stuff, that's where they start. So we are really talking about the music of Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Handel, and Haydn. High classical music. That's what these melodies are based on. So let's start to look at a melody. Let's start to listen to a melody and talk about the procedures and what goes on in the classroom. So you've got your 4 measures. The professor, so I'll call the person who does the dictation each time the professor. It could be a doctor, it could be a person with a master's degree, it could be a person who's a graduate assistant, okay? Man or woman. Now, so they'll tell you it's in a treble clef, they'll tell you the meter, and they may give you the first note, a quarter note on middle C. And then they'll go like this. So they'll play the tonic chord. Tonic chord. Then they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. Then they will wait about 30 seconds, and they'll do it again. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that here. So they'll play the tonic chord, and they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so they will probably play the melody 4 times. Tonic chord, tell you the first note. Sometimes they don't tell you the first note. And they'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, and they'll play a 4-measure melody, and you have to write down what they just wrote. Now, there's a lot going on here. This lecture, I'd like to hope that this lecture would help people who are having trouble with this part of dictation, music dictation, okay, of ear training. Now, what are you doing? When you hear that melody, you're putting fast flicks on a page. Flick, 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 flick. You are not writing notes. If you write notes, you're dead. Do not write notes. When you hear that melody, you're going like this. Bum, 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 dun, 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 dee, dun, dun. That's all you're doing. Now, I'm using a Crayola crayon here, a Crayola bold marker and a big piece of paper. But you're doing it with your pencil and your manuscript paper. So you're making a quick sketch of what the melody is, what you think you heard. If you sit there and you go like this, well, I'm going to write this note like this, and then I'm going to go the next note, you're dead. You'll never get this. You have to do a quick sketch, bump, 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 just like this. And everyone does this. Anyone who's any good at this does a quick sketch like this. Now, what's the second thing that's going on? You're memorizing that melody. You have to listen to it and memorize it. The professor is going to play it 4 times, but you can dictate it back to yourself twice in those 30-second intervals when that professor is not playing. So you can actually dictate it to yourself maybe 10 times. So you are memorizing this melody while the professor is playing it. So you're putting your dashes down and you are memorizing the melody. That's very important. One of the skills that is going on in all of this is being able to listen to a melody and then sing it back. That's a skill that takes time to develop. And you have to be very clear and have to continue to practice that. Constantly listening to a melody and singing it back exactly. If you can't sing that melody back, you can't write down a dictation. You can't do it. You have to be able to sing that melody back to yourself exactly and perfectly. If you can't do that, you can't do this dictation. You can't do it. And I'll prove that to you. Let's go off into a little story. Suppose I were to sit you down here at a table, and I were to give you a blank piece of paper, and I were to give you a pencil. Now, we're not going to do music, we're going to do English. If I sat you down at the table, gave you a piece of paper and a pencil, and I said to you this, I said, I want you to write down this sentence, okay? The big brown cat had on a great big hat. So you go to write it down. Now, you may get the little beginning, you may get the end, okay? But you can't, if you hear it again, the big brown cat had on a great big hat. And then you have that, you know that what that melody, what that sentence is, then you'll be able to write it down, okay? If you say, oh, the big brown cat hat, you're not going to be able to write this sentence down. You just can't do it. And it's the exact same thing with this. You have to be able to sing the melody that you are trying to write down. So, to just remind us. Now this is a very simple melody. And if you're having trouble with more complicated melodies, if you listen to this lecture all the way through, you'll get a lot of ideas about how to do this. Not just this, but more difficult examples. Now the professors get up there and they teach you dictation, they do their thing, or their graduate student, and they go about doing things the traditional way that they always do. Now I have spent 20 years, since 2000, right now it is July 2020, I have spent 20 years looking at this stuff, analyzing this stuff, looking at different types of programs, trying to think of all kinds of different ways of trying to figure this stuff out. And novel ways, things that I've never heard professors use. So hopefully this will enhance what the teachers are teaching you in college. And if you're a high school student, You can start to get a hold of music dictation by listening to this lecture and starting to develop some skills in this area before you go off to college. Now, at the end of this lecture, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you even more detailed information about in what direction to go and what books to use. Now, when you write this melody down, okay, you're at your desk in the classroom, you write the melody down. Now, you'd love to go up to the piano and check it out to make sure that it's the correct melody, but you can't do that. They won't let you. You sit at your desk, you pay a pencil and your manuscript paper, and you write something down and you hand it in. Now, how are you going to know that this is right? How are you going to know that any melody that you write down is correct? Now, this is where logic comes in. There's a variety of different ways of checking this using your brains and just thinking about it. Some of the professors never talk about this, but there's several different ways you can prove to yourself that this is the correct melody, okay? If they gave you this first note, and the piece goes da 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 da, so you know the last note and the first note are the same. Because if you sing through this real fast, you can hear that. You realize, now a lot of times they say, well, you didn't hear this or you didn't hear that. You didn't hear that this ended on the first note, the note that it began on, okay? Now, I'll go off into another story. When a person goes on to become a teacher, you go into college, you get a bachelor's degree and learn how to become a teacher. One of the things they teach you is they say, when you talk to a student and a student doesn't understand what you're saying, you can say it again, or you can say it a different way. Say it a different way, and the student will probably catch on to what you're saying. You give the student a different perspective. So we have all of these teachers in colleges, and they teach the way they teach, which is perfectly good. But I'm going to try and give you other perspectives, other ways to think about this that I've thought of. A friend of mine who's a professor at the Manhattan School of Music said I should write a book on this. But books are words. Books are not sound. So I want to be able to, for you to be able to interact with sounds to prove my point. So, one of the things that tells you this is correct is that the first and the last note are the same. Da 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 da. That's important. That's important. Because that's telling you it's ending of beginning and ending on the same note. Here's another thing that tells you this is correct. Da 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 da. There's 3 notes in here that are all the same. So if you write something and you write 2 notes here, you have to notice through your intelligence that there are 3 notes here that are exactly the same pitch. So that's another thing that tells you you're writing the correct melody. Now, a very useful tool in knowing where you are in this particular discipline is resolution. That's a very important aspect of all of this. Resolution is going to save you every single time. It's amazing how I was never taught about resolution in ear training. It's of fundamental importance. And I will show you exactly what that means by resolution. Watch. If I clearly establish the tonality of C major by playing a 1-4-5 chord, and I'll play a little softer. I'll do it again. Now, when you play a 1-4-5 chord like that, you have touched upon every note in the scale. So you have clearly established the tonality. Now, what note is this then? I know that that's the dominant. I know that that's the fifth note of the scale. How do I know that? Because it goes da, 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 da. And this note does not want to move. You know why? Because it's the tonic. It's the ultimate point to settle upon. Now, I can sing that note down. Da, 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 da. But I have another way of telling that that note is G. I can sing it up. Da, da. I go da, 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 da. So I can prove to myself twice that that note is the G. This melody comes up to this note here, strikes it 3 times, and then comes down to the tonic. Being able to describe in words the melody that you hear is an important part of being able to dictate it. If you sit there and try and figure out notes and you can't get it, say to yourself, tell me, how does this melody go? Exactly what is it doing? This melody goes up to the dominant by step, up to the dominant, we're in C major, plays the dominant 3 times, and then comes down to the tonic in 4 measures. Now, suppose I made a mistake. Okay? Suppose I went and I wrote this. I put a third as the first interval. So the mistake is right here. I put a third as the first interval, and I went up and I came down. Now this is wrong, obviously. Why is this wrong? How can you prove to yourself this is wrong? Well, there's a couple of ways you can prove to yourself this is wrong. First of all, if you look at this melody, this melody is probably in an A natural minor. But the first chord that you got was C major, telling you that this piece is in C major. If this was correct, you probably would have gotten a chord like this. You would have gotten an A minor chord, but you didn't. You got a C major chord. So that's a clue as to why this is wrong. This is also wrong because this note and this note do not match. And you know when you sing this piece that these 2 notes don't match. Now the other thing is this high note here, okay? If we play the proper melody, and then we go up to the dominant, okay? Da-dee-da-dum. This note would not do that. This note would go da-da-dum. This note would only go 3 notes up to the tonic. So that tells you that this can't be the right note. Because this note would take 3 notes to go up to the tonic, but when you sing this note and go up, it takes 4 notes to go up to the tonic. So that's another clue. So if you write something and it's wrong, and you think about it, that will actually help you a great deal in trying to figure out what the melody, what the original melody is, or what the melody is that they're trying to dictate to you. It's very important. Now, this is a very simple example. But when these things get more complicated, you can use the same principles. Now, let's say, today we have computer programs, and you hit the button, and the computer plays off a melody to you, and you enter the melody on a piece of paper or on the computer. An excellent program for doing that is MacGamut, M-A-C-G-A-M-U-T. It's $40. Okay? It works on Windows fine. It used to work on Mac, Mojave, but it doesn't work currently on Catalina. They're hoping to upgrade it in the fall. Okay? So if you have a Mac with Catalina operating system, it's not going to work. But if you have a Windows computer, you get the Mac gamut, and I highly recommend the melodic dictation section, especially the melodic dictation section. So you hit the button and the computer plays this melody, and you write down this, okay? And you're frustrated, so you hit the button and you go to the next melody. Don't do that. That's the worst thing you can possibly do. If this is the melody, and you wrote this, now this goes for any melody. I don't care if the melody is much more difficult than this, or a little more difficult than this, or a lot more difficult than this, and then you write some other melody down. Okay? So you hit the button, you finally see the correct melody, and this is what you wrote. You don't hit the button and go on, say, oh, I'm frustrated, you go on to the next one. Do not do that. That's the worst thing you could do. This is what you do. You say to yourself, why did I get this wrong? That's the first thing you say. Why? So you've got your incorrect melody here, the correct melody up here, and you've done with the whole thing. You have to sit here and you have to say, why did I get this melody wrong? What did I do wrong? And what you did wrong here was you wrote a major third instead of a major second. Okay? And you could have done it. You did other things wrong. You got this. You got this wrong. You're on the sixth degree of the scale instead of the fifth. You came all the way down. You did not end on the same note as you began on. So those are clues. When you compare this wrong version to this, you can see why you got it wrong. Now, the next thing you do is, how am I going to get it right in the future? How am I going to know that this is wrong and this is correct? So you start to devise different procedures in your mind. You start to think about it. And you say, well, I could do this or I could do that. I have to be careful that I'm going up the scale by step here. And then I come down on the first note, that these notes, this note and this note matches. So you can actually start to say to yourself, this is wrong and this is right. What do I have to do to make sure this is more in line with this? What can I do? Okay. Now, I have a little chart here. As you know, there is also sight singing. You're going to have sight singing. So part of music education, part of ear training is both melodic dictation, intervals, chords, and sight singing. You're going to have sight singing as part of dictation. And they're going to give you a sight singing book. It's usually a separate book. And you're going to go through the sight singing, and you'll start on the first one and the second one, and they get harder as you go on. Okay? Now, I am absolutely convinced of this, that if I were to go, here is melodic dictation here, and sight singing here, and this is, number 1 will be the easiest, and number 10 is the most difficult. Now, if I turn around and I write a melody on level 1 for someone to sight sing, I'm making up these different levels. I'm just showing you we're getting harder and harder. If I write a melody on a very simple level that you can sight sing, I'm going to write another simple melody on level 1 that I'm going to give you as a melodic dictation. So we have 2 melodies at both the same level. Okay? 2 different melodies. Now I'm going to make you sight sing the first one, and then I'm going to dictate the second one to you. Okay? And so you'll have a melodic dictation here. Now I wrote 10 melodies, if I were to write 10 melodies and 10 melodic dictations. So I give you number 2 to sight sing, you dictate number 2. I give you number 3 to sight sing, you dictate number 3. I give you number 4 to sight sing, you dictate number 4. 5 to sight sing, 5. Okay. Now, 6 you have a little trouble with. You can't do 6 that well. Okay? And you will find that you will not be able to do a level 6 melodic dictation that well. Amazing as it sounds, I believe that's absolutely true. Then we move you on to level 7, and you can't possibly do the level 7 sight singing. You will also find that you can't do the level 7 melodic dictation. You won't be able to do it. So if you can do all these sight sings up to 5, doing them perfectly, 6 you have trouble, you won't be able to do 7 in terms of a sight singing. The same thing is true over here. You'll be able to do 1, 2, 3, 4 with melodic dictation. 5, you'll do 6, do 6, and you won't be able to do, you'll be able to do 5, you'll have trouble doing 6, and you won't be able to do 7. Now, someone should write I'd like to see a theory student, a doctoral theory student, do a dissertation on this. I think this is absolutely true. Over looking at this for 20 years, I believe that is absolutely true. And some doctoral student in music theory should do his or her doctoral dissertation on this to see if I can be proven correct, wrong, or right. I think I'm right. And if you could do this, that'd be very interesting. So what is the point of all of this? The point is, when you're practicing sight singing, do, re, mi, re, do, okay? When you're practicing sight singing, you are actually improving your ability to do a melodic dictation. If you can sight sing, if you can repeat that melody back, if it's too difficult to repeat back, when that professor plays that melodic dictation, plays the melodic dictation, you won't be able to write it down because you can't sing it. That's amazing, but it's true. So when you're practicing sight singing, when they give you a sight singing book and you start practicing sight singing, you're going do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, re, do. And you're doing all those sight singing exercises. That is improving your ability to do melodic dictation. It's an aspect of improving your ability to do a melodic dictation. Now, one of the things on sight singing that I did not know, that the professors sort of don't tell you, is they don't care about the quality of your voice, okay? If you have a do, re, mi, re, do. Now, there's going to be people in the class who are singers. And they're going to produce a nice, clear sound, a beautiful sound. The professor does not care if you have a beautiful singing voice. They're just looking for accuracy of pitch. And so I always thought they wanted to see some sort of beautiful singing voice, that was a detriment to me, and it's not. So let's look at another piece. If we use logic, let's look at something more complicated. I'll take this down. Now, as I said, all of these dictations are going to be in 4 measures. They'll always give you 4 measures. It's not going to be 3.5 measures. It's not going to be 5 measures, okay? Or it'll be 8 measures. Because this is part of the antecedent and consequent phrase structure in classical music. So they may give you 4 measures when you start in class, or they may give you 8 measures and it'll be something very easy. But that's what they're going to do, 4 or 8 measures. It's not going to be 3.5 measures. It's not going to be 7 3/4 measures. It's not going to be 2.5 measures. It's going to be 4 or 8. 99% of the time, I absolutely guarantee it. That's just what they do with this. Now, there's another aspect about this. When you see that first, I've written all of this stuff out, but when we first started, we just saw this first note, and this was all blank, okay? So the professor goes to play, and you sit there and say, Well, that professor can play anything. Professor can play anything. That's the first note, and that professor can play anything. No, the professor cannot play anything. I always thought that, but that's not true. Now, why is that? These melodies that these professors are writing have something that I call an intelligent design. They are constructed according to the fine principles of classical art music, okay? Like Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Handel, okay? And these melodies will be well crafted. They will not just put down anything. Now, just to go off on a story, when I was in high school, a friend of mine wanted to write pop music. So he wrote some melodies, and he brought them into the high school teacher, and the high school teacher played them, looked at them, and said, okay, you can kind of harmonize this like this and then that like that. Okay? And he gave the kid back the stuff, okay? So I walked away from that experience, and I said, okay, how do you write a good melody? How do you do that? Okay? What you do is you outline chords. You'll notice in this particular melody in C major, you see that the C major chord is outlined. There it is right there. And these notes here are passing notes. They pass between the chord tones. So this whole melody can be harmonized with C major. And there are the notes of the C major chord. The 20th century composer Olivier Messiaen said that melody is strung out harmony, and harmony is strung out melody, and melody is compressed harmony. So these melodies are going to be well-crafted melodies that they are giving to you. Now, there's lots of people, let's turn our sights onto something else. There's lots of people out in the world, okay, all the big pop artists that have 10,000 followers on Facebook, okay, and they sell 100 million copies of this, and they're on YouTube and late night TV and all that other stuff, okay? What they're writing is not this, okay? They probably know some of those principles, but they're not writing what Bach and Beethoven and Mozart did, okay? The teachers in class are teaching you high art music. That's something totally different. They do whatever they want, and they make a lot of money doing that stuff. But that stuff and those melodies are not this. Don't use those melodies to try and write down, to try and do melodic dictation practice, okay? Now, this is a simple melody. Suppose the professor wanted to make a more complicated melody. What would you do? Well, you would start, so I could have the one chord here going all the way through, okay? Now, what melodies do, well-crafted melodies, is they outline chords. So if you all remember, the 1 and 5, the tonic, is an important chord. The second most important chord is the dominant. So if you wanted to make a melody that was a little more complicated than this, you would go through the 1 chord, see if you could circle through the dominant chord, and then go through the 1 chord again. So 1, 5, 1. If you wanted a melody that was even more complicated, you'd circle through 1, 4, 5, 1, the notes of those chords. And you can add, you always add little non-harmonic tones, pieces in here that fill in the harmony, notes that fill in the harmonies. So it's going to go 1, 4, 5, 1. The melodies will now tend to skip around a little more when it gets more complicated. When it gets even more complicated on these melodies and melodic dictations, you start to incorporate the secondary chords. The primary chords are 1, 4, 5, and 1. The secondary chords are 2, 3, 6, and 7. So that if you want something more complicated, it'll circle the 1 chord. You can go 1, 6, 4, 5, 1. And you get a more complicated melody. Now you want to get even more complicated? You start skipping around more. Instead of being conjunct, you skip around more. And you can add chromatic notes. Like let's say this, I'll go. So I came up here, C, D, E, F, G, F sharp, G. So when you're skipping around through, when you're outlining these chords and you want to make things even more complicated, you add chromatic notes. So let's look at another interesting melody, something short. Now this melody is only going to be 2 measures. Now as I said, this was actually the end of a little piece that I had in college once that I had to figure out the bass melody. And when you think about these melodies, you can actually get them if you think about them for a little while. So the first note was this, middle C in the bass clef. It's in 4/4, C major, make things easy. And I had to write down the bass in this particular section. Now, as I said, melody is usually 4 measures, but I'm just going to show you this 2-measure example to make my point, okay? So the bass went like this. Let's see. Oops, Let's try it again. Bass part. Now, if you heard the bass, let's make it easy on you. If you heard the bass went like this. That was the bass. So I'm looking at this melody and go, okay, it skips down. I don't know what the skip is. So I listened to it again. I didn't know what the skip is. I listened to it again. I didn't know what the skip is. So you listen to it again, you don't get it, and you fail the whole thing, completely blank. Well, let's think about this melody for a second. Let's think of what this melody did. What did this melody do? Since I don't know what this first skip is, what did the melody do? This started on C that we were given, middle C in the bass clef. It skipped down, big interval, and then it went up chromatically. Remember? Skip, then it went chromatically. Well, I know the last note has to be C. Has to be C. Can't be something else. Something else wouldn't sound good. That's a C sharp. How about a B natural? So the C sounds good. Now, one of the things the professors won't say is, well, this sounds good, so it's got to be right. They don't use that, the terminology. But if it helps you in trying to get this melody, why not use the term sounds good? So what did it do? It went skip down, da 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 da, then went bum bum bum. Okay. Now, if you know keyboard music, a lot of times it goes dominant, dominant, tonic. Okay? Bum. Now, how do I know that that note is right? Bum, 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 bum. There's my tonic. And I know it's tonic because it's got to be the tonic because this was the last chord. Bum, 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 bum. Was that the right note? Bum, 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 bum. So I can prove that these 2 notes are correct because I can sing from here down to the tonic and I can sing from here up to the tonic, and I can also hear this as an octave because it sounds good. If this wasn't an octave, what would it sound like? Or that octave sounds beautiful. That's an indication to you that this is going dominant, dominant, tonic. Now what did the other notes do? It skipped down and then it went up chromatically to this note here. So the chromatic note before, that's got to be an F sharp. This note here has to be an F natural. It went up chromatically. And this note here has to be an E. So the first interval down was a minor sixth. Now I had a teacher once that said, oh no, you have to get the next note. You have to get this note. You can't get the rest of this. You have to get this note first. Who said that? What book are you going to find that in? If you can get this using some clever device, why should you have to get this note, then have to get this note, then have to get that note, then have to get this note, then have to get that note, then have to get this note, then have to get that note? Look what I did. And I hadn't the faintest idea I was going to fail this. So well, look what I did. I started at the last note, and I said, well, that's the dominant, that's the tonic, and that's the dominant. It goes up chromatically. So if I back up, that note's got to be an E. And this was the correct answer. And I didn't get it by doing the first note, then the second note, the third note. I did it by working backwards. And logically, all I did was say, I described the melody to myself. I said, the melody jumps down, goes up chromatically to the dominant, goes bum, bum, bum. So this has to be the tonic, this has to be the dominant in octave, and it has to go up chromatically to this note. So you don't have to get this note. You don't have to get this interval, because you can get it by coming backwards like this. Now, if you got it, that would be nice. But you need different procedures. Why can't you work backwards? Who says you can't? Who said you have to start on this note and then get that note and then get this note and then get that note? Nobody. Well, some teachers will tell you that. But if you're stuck, you need a creative idea. You need different ideas to try and figure this out. How's this going to work? How am I going to get this? I'm going to fail. I'm going to hand in a blank piece of paper and I'm going to fail. And this is the way you can get it. Now, what did I do? I simply described this melody to myself. And describing the melody to yourself, just describing it to yourself, that will do a lot towards trying to realize what this melody is. You can figure it out by describing it to yourself. It's not a music dictation. That's why you're having trouble. It's a puzzle. Think about it as a puzzle. You know, you have these puzzles, and in math class, you know, A plus B equals C, and C is 4 and A is 4, so B must be 2. Must be 0. Okay? So you think about it, logically you get it. Okay? It's a puzzle. It's a math puzzle. These things are puzzles. If you can't get it in terms of melodic dictation, take a different approach. Approach it as being a puzzle. Think about it as a puzzle you're trying to figure out. If this note and this note are the same, when I hear, they've got to be the same. So this can't be right. If this note ends on the tonic here, and this goes bum, bum. An octave to that note, and this goes up chromatically, and that's the first note, that's got to be right. You can figure many of these things out and pretend they're puzzles. And that is an interesting way to go and figure out how to do melodic dictation. Don't view it as a chore. View it as a puzzle, as something you're trying to figure out in terms of being a puzzle. Now, there's something else about this that's very important. Ear training is a skill that needs to be developed over time. You can cram for the music history test, okay? You can't cram for this. You can't do it. You have to practice this every day. Now, I have a melodic dictation, I have a music dictation program. It's called MacGamut, M-A-C-G-A-M-U-T. It's about $40, okay? If you buy that and download it in the computer. They will give you all kinds of melodies and you can practice. Now, years ago, you couldn't practice melodic dictation on your own. You couldn't do it. Someone had to dictate a melody to you. Now, you could have a tape recorder, okay, and maybe you could put your own melodies on the tape recorder, but you know what they are. But with the computer, the advent of the computer will sit there and dictate melodies to you all day long. You can spend 12 hours a day working on music dictation. The computer won't complain. You may complain, but the computer is not going to complain. Okay? So get a music dictation program. Now, at the end of this lecture, I'm going to put a postlude and I'm going to tell you all about these different types of music dictation programs and what I like. I like Mac Gamut for melodic dictation only. That's what I really use it the most for. And it gives you the correct melody, then gives you the wrong, it'll show you that your melody is wrong, and then you can correct it when you want. And you'll see exactly what you did, and if you wrote this note wrong, it'll have an X over the top and it'll tell you did something wrong. Now, I want to get back to this fact that music dictation is a skill, okay? It is something you have to work on all the time. People hate doing ear training because nobody can do it, it's hard, and it's dry, okay? You play your instrument for an hour, you can play a beautiful piece. With this, you can't, okay? So you have to continue to practice this all the time. It's a skill that you build up over time. If you don't practice this, you will not be able to get harder and harder examples. So you should probably be putting an hour a day into this, maybe 2. Okay, maybe an hour on ear training, an hour on sight singing, and an hour on dictation. Okay? And you have to be honest with yourself. If you're not putting the time in on music dictation and you're failing, that's your own fault. You have to continue to sit there and continue to practice it all the time because it's a skill and you have to build up that skill over time. It's dry and it's terrible to do sometimes, but that's what you have to do. I recommend you might have to put an hour into sight singing every day and an hour into dictation, melodic dictation, harmonic dictation, and all the other types of dictations. This is only one aspect of dictation I'm teaching is melodic dictation here. But there's harmonic dictation, there's also contrapuntal dictation. And I'll have to probably discuss that at the end. So I hope this was helpful, and keep working on it, and you will get this. Good luck.